Good morning. My name is Desmond Clark, and I am the host of Principles of Winning. And every week before we release a new episode of Principles of Winning, I come to you and I discuss one little segment out of that entire conversation, which goes on for maybe 45 minutes, hour and 15 minutes. Hey, it just depends. We let the conversation go where it goes. But we're always speaking about the principles of winning. What are the habits? What are the principles? What are the disciplines that people who have had sustained success, what do they employ as principles, habits, and as principles, as disciplines to help them to get to where they are now? Because I don't feel like success is a secret. It's something that we all can obtain in a good measure. And at least it brings me back to something that Coach Martz told me way back. I think it was like 2010 season. He said the champions are the people who can master the mundane. And can you master the mundane? Can you master those simple tasks that you have to do over and over and over and over and over? And saying, like, oh my God, I got to continue to do this. But those are the tasks that really drive the effectiveness and gets us to success. But we're not really talking about that in general today. We're talking about the episode that is going to release at 12 o'clock today. Hit the links below to get those episodes at 12 p.m. Andrew Farrant, who is the CMO of Global Jet Investments. As we were having our conversation, man, there was a lot of good information, a lot of success disciplines, a lot of success habits that we talked about. And he really talked about the effectiveness of leadership, of how do you create the leadership effectiveness. But him being a CMO, he also talked about brand and brand awareness and how that really elevates a business. And so before I get into it, let me just play you a clip from the conversation that we were having about reputation and brand. And then I got about 5 points that I want to get into with you guys. But here's the clip that I'm referring to: brand reputation versus your reality. I look at brand reputation, however you want to call this. Your brand or your reputation precedes you, right? That goes out. That's what people hear about you. That's what other people are saying about you. But the other part that you mentioned, which is so important, is once they come to the reality of you, once they get on the phone with your customer service reps, once they meet you in person and have a one-on-one with you, does the reality of the brand exceed expectations, or at least meet expectations? So
Right.
we talk a lot about brand building, but also we got to really focus on, do you meet or exceed whatever that brand is once they come into the reality of the actual people that that brand is representing? So that's
Yeah,
the other important part.
that's really interesting.
Yeah, so we really dove deep into that conversation, because you can build a brand, and then you could build a brand on social media, on paper, but then when they actually come and they have to experience the actual brand and the people that represent that brand, is it the same? Is it not the same? Is it better? What is it? But before we get into that, I know there may be some people who are in corporate America is like, oh, I don't need to build a brand. Every business needs to build a brand. And I said that intentionally because, yes, you are a business, whether you own a business or whether you work in a business for someone else or with someone else, you are a business. And I've defined this many times, and I want to define it again for you. A business is an entity, you, or Bear Down Logistics, whatever that is, you as an individual or a company name. It is an entity that exchanges a service or a product for compensation. All of us do that. We all do that. So we have to start looking at ourselves as a business. And when we start looking at ourselves as a business, the next thing that we need to start looking at is, what is our business brand? Yes, you, Mr. Joe Blow Williams, have a brand, whether you know it or not. And it takes me back to my book, Principles of Winning, the first principle is your name and your word. And your brand is simply a name and the story that goes behind it. The story that you tell and the story that people tell about your name. And you really have to be intentional about your brand. Here's why. Here's the note that I wrote. So we want our brands, we want our names, we want our stories to be valuable, to create value for us. So how do we do that? Well, we got to continue to bring increasing value to the people that we serve. And when we bring increasing value to the people that we serve, we got to tell the story. We got to be able to tell the story. We got to be able to communicate what value we actually bring, and then encourage those people that we bring the value to also tell the story. Coach them on how to talk about you and what you have done for them. That's how you create a brand, by your name being attached to a story that people relate to for the services or the products or the work that you do for them, the value that you create for them. That becomes your reputation. That becomes your brand. So my brand, Des Clark Speaks. I remember I was doing free speaking engagements around the Chicagoland area at every Lions Club, Rotary Club, and I got my first opportunity to do some paid speaking stuff because somebody at the Rotary Club, Mr. Spungen, he liked what I was talking about. He said that he thought that what I was saying could bring value to a couple of companies that he was involved in a couple of organizations. So he took me on the road to a couple of places with him. And that was the beginning. And as I continued to create value, I continued to tell the story. And I had other people also tell the story. And as those stories was told, in the value that I brought to people continued to create more value, I was able to become more valuable and bring more value to myself, i.e., charge more for my speaking engagements. Now I'm up to $20,000 a speaking engagement. When I first started doing team development, I had to do team development for free. But as I kept increasingly adding value, as these teams kept increasingly hitting their numbers and gaining value from the things that I was providing to them, the tools that I was providing to them, now I became more valuable. I could get them to tell my next potential prospect or client, hey, what did I do for them? So that value, man, continue to bring value to your brand, bring increasing value to the people that you serve. Tell the story, encourage them to tell the story. So that's how you develop your reputation. And most importantly, here's the thing: when you develop a reputation and you develop a brand, you have to meet or exceed the reputation and the brand, because the stories will be told. Your reputation, it will precede you. People will be talking about you, whether good or bad. That's why you have to focus and be very intentional on what you want people to think and say about you, because they will talk. They are going to talk. And if they're talking really, really good about you because they see all of this stuff over social media, it looks good, it's presented the right way, and people's like, oh, wow, man, I want to work with that person because I like the presentation. I like what they got to say. I heard a few things about them. Now, when they actually encounter you, the brand, or your business, the brand, will you exceed expectations or at least meet expectations? And here's where the people who have a standard of excellence will win, because I read this stat, and I'm going to end with this. 85% of people, companies, don't meet expectations. 85%. Only 13% meet expectations. And a whopping 2% exceed expectations. That 2%, those are the people that's killing it out here, because they not only meet expectations, they exceed expectations. So that's part of what we talked about on this episode of Principles of Winning. But you got to go and check out this episode. Andrew Farrant, phenomenal. Global Jet Investments. He is the CMO, and he talks about how do you execute, how do you bring forward really good leadership? What are the principles behind that? And then he really dives into his principles, his personal principles of how he was able to become and remain successful in corporate America, not just as a professional, but as a person too. And here's something that I truly believe: when you develop the person, everything else around you will continue to develop in the way that you want it to. And Andrew has some great insights and great things that he did that allowed him to be successful that maybe, hey, you can incorporate into your arsenal. The link is below. We're releasing it at 12 o'clock. Please go to @DesClark88 on YouTube. Subscribe there. I have a lot of good content on there. And just follow me all over social media. I put out a lot of good stuff. If you want to stay motivated, if you want to get insights from professionals, I'm your guy. I'm bringing it all to you. I'll see you guys next week right here Wednesday doing another live as we drop another great episode of Principles of Winning. You guys have a wonderful Wednesday.